All right, chat. It's Thursday. We are going to do a little bit of basics today. Let's see if we get the camera right. I have to try and anticipate how much I'm going to be hunched over when I'm drawing and then adjust the camera. This will be good for now. We're going to start slow, chat. I want to make sure that enough people are here before we start. So I'm probably just going to start like doodling and warming up till we get some more people. But until then, guys, feel free to just chat with me and, you know, ask me any of your questions. I may or may not have answers, but yeah, that's where we're at. Alrighty, just gonna pull up some reference images. Also, chat, let me know if music is too loud. It's always hard for me to judge because I kind of like lower it for you guys, but then I ran the air conditioner and now I'm like trying to hear over it. Yeah, this brush should be good. And yeah, guys, I was trying to think. I'm like trying to like backtrack in my mind. I'm like, how did I start drawing like people and characters? And then like what's kind of changed? So I had to pull out a lot of my old notebooks, and that was kind of interesting to see how I kind of started and then how my style developed, especially once I started storyboarding. I feel like my approach to drawing figures kind of went more towards like gesture drawing. So it's like a weird combination of where like I'm aware of like the anatomy, right? But also there like a big part of me is just a gesture drawing artist. So I kind of had to like backtrack a little bit and kind of break down like what am I actually like seeing in my mind when I draw like characters. So I'm hoping today I can like kind of explain one way that works for me to draw people, like for beginners. But again, I mean, one thing I've noticed after watching a lot of artists is that everyone's brain works a little bit differently. So everyone has like a preferred kind of like method they use for either drawing heads or the torso, you name it. And so I think what I would encourage everyone to do is, you know, you can watch me today and then go out and look for some other artists and kind of look at their methods and then try doing it yourself. And then what you're gonna do is eventually develop a style that's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And it'll click in your brain because, you know, that's just the way it'll work best for you. But you can borrow ideas from other artists and the way they do it. So mine is kind of like a combination of a ton of artists I've watched, plus a little bit of like my own flair added into it. So we're gonna see if I can kind of like go back to the basics, you know? So we're just gonna start doodling. The hard part is gonna be keeping me from getting like too caught up in drawing like gesture style. Because I noticed that I definitely do lean towards that more. I think why I like gesture drawing is because it's really, you really don't have to do much to like capture the essence of, you know, whatever story you're trying to tell with a pose. I'm trying to think more in like a construction type of way today. But I think maybe I can combine both. We'll see what happens. I do know one of my preferred methods, especially when I started, was kind of like working with like cube shapes. Just because I feel like everyone knows what a box looks like, right? And most people can draw like a decent box. I have, let me see if I drew some in here, guys. It's like a really good exercise I like to do, where you just do like sketches from reference, but you build the whole thing out of, pretty sure I did it in this notebook. You build all the poses out of like cubes and rectangles. Even like the legs and the feet. It's in here somewhere, guys. I need to do that exercise more often. It's also great once you start learning perspective, because it's a lot easier to draw, you know, a cube in perspective than some other shapes that are a little more organic. So it's a good place to start. Oh, where did I do that? Maybe it was my other notebook, guys. At the end, aha, here it is. Okay. See if you guys can see. There we go. You can just see that I kind of drew them all pretty like cube-like shapes. And then I just kind of use like lines to attach like where the spine is. So that's kind of what I want to show you guys today. Although I do have a slightly different method for drawing the torso sometimes. It really just depends on the pose. Oh, I'm drawing this way too big. All right, try. Let me make sure everything seems to be running. Very good. Oh, chat, I'm falling asleep already. Maybe we'll turn this more into a cube. I kind of developed this one method for drawing the torso. Like, I think it was like last year sometime. I'll show it to you guys in a bit once we get some more people. But maybe we'll just draw. We'll try and draw some cube versions, I guess. Nice and simple. Kind of seen a little bit of the back there. And sometimes I will do a little bit of a taper on the end. Again, guys, like it's been a while since I put myself through the basics. And I'm also wouldn't call myself like an amazing like character drawing artist, so but I'm learning. That's the important part. This other arm's kind of hidden behind here. We see the elbow. Oh. And I'm just gonna draw the hand, kind of some cubes too. Just to keep it simple. Now, for the legs, similar thing going on here. I feel like I made her head way too small. This is the beauty of digital art, guys. That might be a little big, but I think that works for now. Also, this method is like really fun, in my opinion. Now, granted, I'm not drawing like perfectly straight lines. I am making it slightly, you know, organic. Man, my allergies, chat. I don't know what it is. Some days are just worse than others, you know? I think one bad habit I developed while I was studying storyboarding is that I would like punish myself in my head if I was drawing slow. And so now when I try to like slow down and think about what I'm doing to do studies, I'm usually just like kind of feeling like, oh my gosh, like I'm such a loser. It's taking me forever to draw this pose. You know, I should be able to draw this in 10 seconds. But just remember, guys, it's important to have study time to problem solve. So don't do what I do and beat yourself up for being slow. We're allowed to be slow sometimes. Slow is not always a bad thing. We want to be intentional with our learning time. This isn't a project for a client, so you know. Just gonna taper this down a little bit. And for the feet, we're just gonna do almost like the shape of a brick. Technically, there's like a little joint there. I feel like this exercise also helps me start to think in kind of like more 3D, you know? And then you can also add like center lines to your cubes if you want. It really just depends what you want to do. I pretty much always put a center line down the torso and then into the hips as well. Alright, let's do this other one that's a little bit more complicated. Let's try a different method. This one, I'm going to use my slightly more like, what's the word I'm looking for? More gesture-like way of breaking down a figure. I like doing this, especially if the character is like a softer kind of build, like not as like sharp. You know what I mean? Like it's just like where like, you know, like the Disney characters where, you know, I feel like they make the villains usually like pointy, you know what I mean, in design, and then the good characters are usually softer. So this is kind of another way I like to do it. I'm just kind of like, all right, that's the shoulders. And then we're just gonna say this kind of like U shape here is our torso. And then we're gonna create our center line. So this center line is gonna tell us which way the rib cage is facing. So we got that. And then usually I'll go in and I'll do the hips. So the hips are actually turned. And what I like to do is I'll usually choose to draw like the direction, like the hips are slanted, just to kind of like keep me on track as I build it around. Actually, this is sloped up more. Then what I do is I'll just kind of like mass in the shape, which is usually just kind of like an egg shape. And then also I want to block in that center line. This one comes almost straight down. Actually, I think there's a bit more tilt happening here than we realized. I think it's a bit more like that. The shoulder is back here. And then you can use, I like to use just circles to like kind of mark out the joints. You know, like the old, where they like the G.I. Joe toys? You know, where like you could see the joints to like move their arms? That's what I'm kind of like doing when I draw these. For some reason, that just kind of works for my brain. Alrighty, and then maybe we won't even really get into doing too much more. We might just break down. There's a lot of things that like go into once you start adding the arms and the legs, but I feel like the torso is a good place to start with kind of like figuring out a lot of the character. Also helpful in your reference photos, look for like where like, you know, the shirt ends, where the pants begin, and you can kind of use those lines to help create kind of like 3D with your words. I can't think of the words for it. With your character. So I find that helpful. Just kind of help you see which way things are flowing. Then for the arms, this is, I feel like, a little bit closer to how I usually draw. Or I'm just kind of like gently using, usually like cylinders, circles, but sometimes squares is usually how I do it. It's like a combination. It really just comes down to to how I feel like I need to approach it. And it depends on the pose, you know? But it's not about drawing, you know, a perfectly finished. And the anatomy doesn't have to be perfect either, really. We're getting a good foundation down, right? For like movement, general proportions. And then we can start working on those things, which we're not gonna do today. Today we're just gonna stick to like the basics, you know? Kind of like breaking things down. Right, this leg is coming forward. The knees here. But again, guys, I really think that you just keep practicing. You draw a lot, and eventually, you know, you're gonna get a feel for it. You know, I feel like actually maybe the line kind of curves like that. Yeah, that's a little bit closer. And just kind of like mess around with the moving things around, you know, and eventually you problem solve everything and it'll start to come together. Hey Gecko, guten Abend. We're just kind of like warming up until some people show up, but we're doing the basics drawing. And hopefully this is helpful for everybody. But I know my last like teaching lesson, I felt like I did not like ace teaching. So I'm hoping today we'll keep to very, very basic stuff. Han Babao, hello, welcome. And hopefully today will make a little more sense of my last teaching stream. I don't know any of these basics. Yo, you're in the right place then. Don't worry. Don't worry. And also, guys, feel free to ask me questions. If I don't know them, I'll look them up. If I do know them, I will try to answer. That's the best we can do, right? All right, so I think what we'll do is I want to show you guys how you can trace reference images to learn. I'll stick to the music. That's all right. But this is interesting anyway. Yeah, it'll be interesting at the least. So that'll be good. Good enough to stick around for, right? Also, we get to listen to like Hanyu's music while we draw. So that's kind of a win. Like, I feel like I'm getting like almost all his songs memorized now because I listen to them like the whole stream on loop. One might say I'm Hanyu's biggest fan. I'm probably his biggest listener. We need Hanyu to make more Minecraft music though, because I really like his Minecraft tracks. Alrighty, I feel like I need to put a head on this person. Guys, when it comes to putting the head on, I get a little stressed about it, I'll be honest. So what I do is I'll just start putting in like circles, and if it feels too far to one way, then I'll just adjust it. And it's kind of just a matter of adjusting until it feels right. Because it do be a bit complicated trying to get the head perfectly positioned. I used to have a big trouble with that. Alright, that's kind of cropped out. Alright, chat, let's get going. Let me bring in a reference photo, and we can talk about how we can use our reference images to kind of teach us about kind of like basic shapes that you can find in the body. So when you're drawing your own characters, you can use those basic shapes. And then I'll kind of show you how to not trace anymore, but like look at a reference image and work from there. But I think we'll start by tracing to kind of show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. All right, I stole some reference images from the internet. Some of these I think are from like Old Navy. They're just like, and then some of them, there's actually some great people on Pinterest who like pose for drawing. I really like this one girl. She does stuff. Ich habe meine Malblock und Bleistift und bin bereit. All right, sounds good, Gecko. Let me know if I end up going too fast too. All right, we'll start with this first one. And then we'll put in a second one as well. These are the two pictures I was just drawing earlier. Oops, Control V. Because I also want to show you guys, like, it doesn't... Did I just stretch the image? Nope, there we go. I want to show you guys that no matter, like, what proportions, body type is, like, you can use the same building blocks. It doesn't matter. We're all people. Alrighty. So let me grab a color that will be easy for you guys to see. Now, you don't have to draw along with this just yet, guys. I'm just going to show you. Lower the opacity a little bit. I'm going to show you kind of what's going on in my brain when I'm like looking at a reference image. I'm like, okay, I want to draw this pose. Let's start with the one on the left. One thing that I think is going to be the best place for you guys to start is drawing. Like, we drew some cubes the other, I think that was like last month when we did that drawing stream. Do you remember when we were drawing the buildings and we were drawing like the cubes like this in perspective? So we can use those same cubes and shapes to map out the human body. Very, very basic. Das finde ich interessant, weil ein Arm vorne ist und ein Arm hinter den Körper versteckt. Ich bin gespannt zu lernen, wie man das macht. Oh my goodness, my German is terrible. But yeah, I think this is going to be interesting. But once I show you with the cubes, I think it'll help you be able to think in like 3D as well. All right, so chat, one thing we can do here is we want to pay attention to the top of the shoulder line, right? So we're getting an angle up like this, right? And then we can also use kind of like the shirt here as the guide. So it's gonna be like the bottom of the waist. But we can use the cube shape just like this. So it's here we're seeing a bit of the side. Right there, we got a cube. Now, it's a bit more like one of those flatter like shipping boxes, but it's pretty much a cube. And then we can do the same thing for the hips, but this time we've got the line coming down this way. And we're seeing a bit of the side there. Boom. Cube. All right. And then here again, we're just kind of following. Here we see more of the side, right? And then if you want to like help give you like a little more idea what the rib cage would look like, you can add this kind of little shape in here. But that's pretty much a really simplified way of drawing the upper torso. And then we can kind of imagine it coming behind, what that would look like, right? Also, another important thing that you can do that'll help you map out your character is you want to add a center line. This will also kind of help you keep on track, like which way the torso is pointing. And you can do the same thing like here on the hips. Which I feel like my center line is not that great. But again, these aren't like perfect cubes. Like, we can get a little organic with it. But it's a good way to start. So if you have like a printer, you can print out, you know, your reference pictures with lower the opacity, or use like whatever color you need to see on top while you're drawing. And that's a good way to kind of like break them down. Also, you can draw the line from the rib cage down to the hips if you want. That kind of helps you see the way it's gonna connect. All All right, anyone have any questions before we keep going? Because I don't want to go too fast. Maybe we should draw. Should we draw over one more, guys? Make sure this is saved. We can draw over one more, maybe. Only copy one here. All right, we'll draw over one more. Is this right, Larry? Yes, it is. All right, so again, I like to start with the shoulders. That's usually where I start. And so we're looking for this angle, right? And then we're also looking like, we can mark in the hips first. Ich male erst meine, die linke Person 2 sind mir zu viel. All right, Gecko. Well, also, if you're not ready quite to start drawing, like if you feel like you're not ready, we're just kind of like going over the basics, but we're gonna draw these poses again without tracing. So if that makes it easier for you, just know that we're gonna be doing these again. I just kind of wanted to show you guys what we're gonna be doing before we start doing it. All right, so again, we can mark out the line of the hips, right? And then we can use our cubes again. So we get the side of the cube here, and then we can draw up the center, and we can connect the back if we want. No, I didn't quite put that line where it needed to be. Just like the side, it comes down to there. So just very, very basic ways. Okay, got it. All right, so let me make sure you guys can still see the reference. Maybe we'll turn off the other pictures and we'll start with the far left one for you, Gecko. Let me delete the box there. And I'll hide these. Nope, not that one. Let me order these quick. Okay, now they're in order. All right, so maybe I'll use blue this time. Yeah, I like the blue. Alrighty. So let's say we want to try and draw this pose, right? We're gonna start by kind of like breaking down the basic angles and shapes, right? So we're gonna say, one thing you can do, like I have the image right here, so I can hold my pen up against the screen and then move it over, and that kind of helps me see the exact angle of the shoulders. It's like I'm holding it there. Let me see if I can point this in my tablet so I can show you guys what I'm doing. So if you have this printed out, it's like your reference printed out, you can do this. For like, I'm holding my pen, so this is the angle here. And then I can use that kind of as a guide to draw the degree of the angle. It just helps you like get it more accurate. So I don't know if that'll be helpful for you guys. Another thing you'll see painters do. Now, I'm gonna give you guys some bad advice. This is how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to sit back far enough that your arm is out perfectly straight. This is what I was reading online. I'll tell you guys how I do it in a bit. You're supposed to hold your arm out straight, and what you can do is you can measure. So you would have, typically they were painting from life, right? So I'm looking at my wall, and let's say I'm trying to draw like a book that's turned, resting at an angle over on my shelf, right? So holding my arm straight, I'm gonna adjust that angle, right? Now say my canvas is here. Holding that angle straight, not moving my arm, I'm gonna rotate and bring it over the canvas. And what you can do is pretty much copy that angle because you just like captured it with the, with your pen. I don't know if this is making sense to you guys. And then you can go ahead and mark it in. And so I'm using a very similar method for like figuring out the angles on my character poses. Now chat, this is not as accurate because if you don't have your arm out completely straight, when you move from place to place, if you move your elbow, chances are you're gonna rotate a little bit. The depth is gonna end up off, so you're gonna either move forward or back. So things can get a little bit wonky if you're not careful, but I think you can still kind of cheat using that method. Hold up, chat. Let me clear this out. How dare they disrupt our teaching class? Da, da, da. Oh yeah, delete this. Okay, where were we? Anyway, we were talking about angles. Okay, so here's what I do. I have my monitor in front of me. So say I'm drawing from a reference that's up on my monitor. You may be using your iPad, you may be using your phone. What you can do is kind of like hold your pen up and you're gonna adjust the angle, right? And it will be a little off, but then I bring the angle down to the reference and you can do it a couple times. So you mostly have it right. And then you can mark it in. It will get a little bit off because your arm's coming down and closer. I don't recommend this too much if you're doing super like accurate proportion work, like portraits. Sometimes it gets a little off. You need to make sure that you're perfectly, straightened out. But this is a semi-good method to kind of like figure out what angles you're seeing. Because an angle might be sharper than what you're thinking. And that happens to me all the time. I'll be like, yeah, I think the shoulders are like this, right? Like in my head, that's what I think I'm seeing. But then if you go and you hold your pen up to your reference image, you're gonna see that is a lot sharper angle than it actually is. So I check angles a lot when I'm drawing from reference. Now, if you're not drawing from reference, it can really be anything you want. But if you're working from reference and you want to, capture it exactly how it was, that's a great way that you can use your pen to, keep yourself on track by checking those angles. So I check it. I'm going to use the up on my monitor and we're going to compare it. That's actually almost, I would say that was 98% accurate. So maybe chat, it isn't as awful as the tip as I was thinking. Does that make sense, everyone? Just want to make sure everybody's got that. And you can try it out. So we could try on the hips now. We want to figure out what this angle is. We kind of just have to imagine. All right, like where kind of like the hip bones. We can also see this like line here on her pants, like the seam. We can use that as a guide. We're like, well, I think it's about, that steep. But it's like, well, how do we know for sure? Well, we can double check by measuring. Ja, bisher kann ich gut folgen. It all makes sense? All right, very good. So I'm just going to use my reference and I can kind of see, you can make a couple marks. It's actually a bit more like that. All right, guys. We have our angles in. Now, typically what I like to do is kind of draw out where I think the center line is going to be. This is also where you can use measuring if you want. So we can see, like, here's her collarbone, right? That's a good, like, where our collarbone comes into the little V point. This is the exact center. So you can look for that when you're drawing. And then, so take your pen up to the collarbone, right? And you can close one eye, which helps. And you're just gonna like try and capture, like, what is the angle? Which way is that facing, Is it a little bit straighter? Is it a little bit more curved? I'm thinking it's a little bit like this. Let's check it on reference. I was close, but I was off by just a little bit. It's a bit more like this. So this is also going to help us figure out which way to draw our cube, because like the human body is very organic, right? So it's like, well, maybe it's more like this. Maybe the rib cage is more like this. Especially if you're drawing people with like looser clothes, it's going to be a little bit harder too. So sometimes having those kind of like marking points is really helpful. All right, so we've got our center line. Now we need to like finish this top part of the cube. So we can use this direction of the center line to draw the side of our cube. And we're going to draw the other one. Now, I created these lines a lot longer than they needed to be, but I just wanted to do that because it helps me visualize. This is a rough sketch, and so it doesn't matter if it's really messy. So use as many lines and as guides, like as many lines and guides as you need to help you kind of like piece together and problem solve the proportion and like size and angles, just everything. So feel free to get messy, guys. You can also, if you're working on, I don't have any here with me. If you're working with real paper, you can use a colored pencil in like blue or green or even red if you want to do, your problem solving underneath. And then, you can go over with a ink marker at the end once you have the finished, sketch of this finished, what I would call foundation for your character. So that's one way you can do it. Or if you want to do it in graphite pencil, and then what you do is ink over it, and then once the ink is dry, you can erase all the graphite from underneath. So you can get as messy as you want with your graphite, and then you can clean it up with some inks to finalize the lines you want to keep, and then erase out the graphite in case you're working with real paper. All right, and then we're gonna try, here's where we get a little bit into some perspective. Like, I didn't want to talk too much about this, but we did end up doing a little bit last month. But we do have to imagine our cube is in perspective a little bit. So do you guys remember how things go to, remember the horizon line? And then we have, right, I guess is it called like focal point? No, that's not the word for it. Perspective point? I know there's a word for it, chat. I should have prepared for this. But things kind of like spiral out, right? Like a wagon wheel from here. And edges that move inward, right? So let's draw a cube here. They are going to follow towards this line. And so it's the same thing with our character drawings. Like, people are going to be in perspective too. Like, we all end up following these perspective lines. So what we can do, let me get rid of these. Don't feel like you have to draw that, guys. I just wanted to demonstrate. So we kind of have to imagine that this line is going off into an infinity, and somewhere down here is going to be the point where it's spiraled out from. And so this angle of the bottom rib is not going to be the same as the top one. That's kind of what I want to show you guys. So it's not going to be as steep necessarily, because, oops, how do I write the blue? It is a cube in perspective. All right, chat. So one more thing to note is this photo's kind of like taken a little bit lower, so we're not really seeing too much of the top of her shoulders here. And so we're actually going to be probably seeing more of the bottom of this cube. So when we do the side, right now we only have like the front surface, like here. We only have like this part in, right? For the next part, we need to capture this side. And so we're gonna just try and follow, like, we can't see the top of the cube because the camera's more below. Again, we'll do a stream on perspective eventually. I try to choose relatively flat images, but just be aware that, like, If something feels off in your basic cubes, it could be that the perspective isn't quite right. All right, so we have our cube in perspective. And I'm gonna draw in a little bit of the rib cage here. Not a very accurate one. I'm gonna erase out this. I'm gonna imagine the cube connects back here. All right, so we have our rib cage. I know this feels like a lot, guys, but it's important that that we learn this. All right, so we have the angle of our hips here, right? But we don't have the cube yet. So what we can do is we can try and find the center. Also, let me know if the music's too loud, guys. This is a bit more upbeat. Maybe I'll just lower it just a little bit. Because we gotta stay focused. We gotta lock it in, chat. Okay. I gotta like turn it down so I can stay focused. All right, so now for the hips, we need to draw another cube. So interesting thing here, look how much we're seeing. We're seeing a lot more of the side here, but not really much of the side here. And that's because we have a little bit of a twist going. So she's kind of like turned away this way, but then the hips are more turned this way on this side. So this side of our cube is going to be less wide. And another thing we can do is use this center line to kind of guide us. And again, draw over your reference. Look at your reference. Try and like figure out where is the angle. And you can also use like a person's like belly button as a center guide too down there. So like, where is this gonna come to center? So her hips are actually facing like pretty straight on for us. We're only seeing a tiny bit here at the side. So it's gonna curve down, but then kind of straighten out, but at an angle. All right, so again, using our hip guide angle that we drew, we're gonna put that in. And we're gonna put another one in here. And I'm gonna shorten this up because we don't need it that wide. And then for the side, we're actually gonna draw a little bit thinner. And a bit like that. Now chap, what if I got this angle right? I think I might have to. Also, I think I need to make this a little bit wider. There we go. All right, so here, center line, and then we'll cut it like that. And we're actually seeing a bit at the top of the cube here. Not a whole bunch, but it's kind of dipping down. A little bit like that. Everybody feeling good so far? I feel like this may have been a bit more complicated. This is a very subtle kind of like turn and angle for this character, not too apparent. May not have been a great choice on my part. Sorry, guys. But we got that, right? Maybe what we should do, should we block out another one? I don't want to go too much further than just like the torso and hips at this point. Just because I don't want to confuse anyone too much yet. I can straighten that out a little bit. Sometimes what I'll do too, if it feels like it doesn't quite like look like the hips, same thing where we added this little detail arch up here in the rib cage. What you can do from the corners, draw like an arcing line to the center, and then that kind of shows you where like here's like where the legs are going to connect in, kind of like the joint system there. So that might help you like visualize a little bit, kind of what we got going on. All right, guys. Should we do one more? Should we break down one more? I'm not sure if we're gonna go into arms too much today. I just want to show you how you can break down, because we'll use very similar methods for the arms and the legs, but I feel like the torso and the hips are like an important start. You guys let me know. We can do this guy next. You guys don't lose your reference. There we go. Maybe I can make this smaller. I'll use a different color. Let's use maybe pink. Pinkish red. That should be good. Wir können gerne noch ein Beispiel machen. Sounds good. Bill, hello, welcome. Let's do another example. All right, we're gonna do another example then. All right, so on this one, he's kind of like tilted down a little bit. So first we're gonna measure. Let me move this out of the way actually. And then we're gonna measure. We're gonna try and measure our angles a little bit. All right, so again, if you're using your phone for a reference, you can just put your phone next to your page or your tablet, and you can measure off of that too, if you guys want to do. That's another option. All right, so we're gonna measure the angle of the shoulders here. And I usually just kind of measure from like the top point of the shoulders to like the very like, what would you call that? Not the shoulder blade, I don't know, but like the highest point on the shoulders. We're not counting like this upper part where it starts to come up into the neck. I'm usually trying to measure a line from the highest point on the shoulder to there. Then usually for the hips, it's kind of like up where like the joint starts and then kind of downwards. So following that. Another good thing is just like look at a skeleton. That might help you guys if you have it, but pretty much everyone knows what like human like bone structure looks like. But if you guys are a little fuzzy on that, just feel free to look up like a skeleton and it'll kind of help you see. All right, so we're gonna measure out our little shoulder blade area. We're gonna try and figure out that angle first. So I'm gonna try and freehand this. See if this is accurate. Pretty close. I actually made mine a little high. All right, we're gonna make it as long as we need to. Now, another thing you can do using your reference to like find that bottom line angle if you want, it won't always be apparent, but look for kind of like the thinnest part on the waistline. That's usually around like where the rib cage ends. And you can try and like imagine drawing like an angle and point from there. And again, to find the center line, we just kind of look for like where the collarbone would be. And then imagine the line comes like straight out from there. So that's kind of like the angle we're getting with the rib cage. Now we are doing this really rigidly. Like the human body is not really cubes, but I think it's a good way to start. Eventually you're gonna get to the point where you realize like, you know, the rib cage does bend a little bit. So we get a little bit arcing in here and that's a bit more accurate. But for now, drawing straight lines is probably the easiest thing for us to do. And so I'm just gonna measure out the angle I think that I'm seeing here. Yeah, about like that. And again, it doesn't matter if I drew it here or here. I'm just trying to give myself enough room. We'll figure out the width in a bit. And then for the bottom line, we can use that measurement from before. There we go. And we can use these as our side guides. All right, so this is our center. And also, you know how we can go in and draw the rib cage up like this. Also, I think I drew this too far because this needs to be centered, right? What you can also do is draw little lines in like this for the collarbone, if that helps you guys kind of like visualize that like that's the upper part and the collarbone's cut in there. Because then like the shoulder joints are going to be about in here. But we're not going to worry about arms yet today because arms are a whole nother problem. So we're just going to focus on this. And if you want, you can use cylinders to kind of like imagine there being a little bit more behind the rib cage. Also, let me get rid of these lines here. We don't need this anymore. Oops, I accidentally erased that. Actually, we do need those lines because those are kind of like our rib cage angle, actually. All right, we're going to connect that in. All right, so now we need to figure out the angle of the hips. Again, we're going to try and like imagine in our reference, where does that joint start, right? And then we're going to measure out the angle. Bit like that. See if we can add it in here. All right, and then we're just going to use our center line and use that kind of as our guide. It's going to start here, we know, because our rib cage is already facing this way, right? And then it needs to come down. Again, you can measure like the angle of the hips. So this is going to be another cube. Granted, I think I should have drawn, there's going to be a bit more bone structure up here. If we really wanted to box it in, it'd be higher. So let's try and copy that. And then again, up here with the rib, which we didn't make 3D yet, guys. Bear with me, because we are seeing some of his side here. And that's gonna give us that 3-dimensional rib cage. So actually, let's put that in. Let's just make our cube a little 3-dimensional now. Again, this is not perfect. This definitely could be refined, but it's getting our brains thinking in a different way, in a more 3D way. All right, so we're gonna find the angle. I think it's gonna be about like that. So we can kind of imagine this line has to come down and then meet that line there. And then we get the top, our top angle following the base when we put in. Now we're gonna imagine like, all right. So this is again where you'll have to learn like different proportions, different builds. So like here, her hips are much wider than the rib cage, right? But guys have much smaller like hips in comparison to the upper torso. So, you know, you'll learn to like keep an eye out for the different proportions. So I'm just gonna imagine like this line kind of carries through into this one. And then here. And then we're gonna get our side for the cube. There we go. And again, you can use these kind of lines if you want to help yourself kind of visualize like we did. We can see like, oh, the collarbone's here. This is like the rib cage, right? And then this is like the leg joint in here. Again, it is like those like G.I. Joe toys. I don't know of a more modern example, but you know, like the what's the word I'm looking for? You know, like the kids' toys where you can like move the arms, like they're jointed and they have like ball joints in each joint, and you're almost doing like the same thing when you're drawing a person, because they'll be like, oh, there's a ball joint here, right? And then eventually there'll be one in the elbow, and there'll be one in the wrist, and then Lord, we get the hands, and there's just like joint after joint after, yeah, hands will be a whole thing. But yeah, that's kind of like where you can take it. Does anyone have any questions? let me know. And again, I don't know if anyone caught this in the beginning, but I was talking about how there are a lot of different methods to drawing people and breaking down the human anatomy into basic shapes. And so I do recommend find some other artists on YouTube, watch how they do it, try doing their method, and then watch some more artists try doing their method. And what you're going to do is end up just like piecing together something that feels right for how your brain works with drawing. And that's probably the best way, I think, is to just borrow a lot of techniques from different people where their methods just kind of work for you. And then it'll be much easier. Because like the way I'm teaching you guys today may not be the best way for like the way you learn, right? And so I highly encourage that you guys, you know, give this a shot. If it isn't working for you, there are a ton of other methods and different ways of visualizing. I watched a guy this morning who does the rib cage and all that kind of like shape by drawing an egg. And then he took a real egg, right? And he put a hairband around it so that you got like that center line. And he was using that as his like reference and guide to visualize. So that's another way. Bis jetzt habe ich keine Fragen. Ich kann gut folgen, aber es sieht alles noch nicht so gut aus wie bei dir. Es sieht bei mir noch etwas holprig aus. Oh no. That's okay, Gecko. Which brings me to something I wanted to show you guys. I want to show you guys something. I found my old notebooks because I wanted to show you guys how I started and kind of like how my style adapted over time. Let me take a screenshot of this here. Yeah, this is 2020, so 6 years ago. This is when I was just starting to try and draw like my own characters because I wanted to do like anime style fan art and stuff. So this is from one of my sketchbooks. So as you can see, these are not fantastic. Now, also to be fair, at this point, I was pretty good at drawing from reference, but I wanted to be able to draw without a reference. So it's interesting to see that like I could draw, but like anytime I tried to like do something out of my head or do a person, some reason it was especially hard. But you can kind of see how I was figuring out, again, using like the ball joints for the different joints, right? And then this is back when I used more of the egg shape method for the torso, which is not wrong, right? It's just back then that kind of worked for me, but now I like to use the blockier method some reason. I found it easier once I started having to do perspective, that the cubes kind of worked better in my brain, but this is another way you can do it, kind of like what I was showing earlier. So this is a more realistic expectation for the kind of like what your drawings might look like in the beginning and how they probably should look, because you know you're just starting. Here's another one. Here I was drawing a lot of like legs and knees. I had the hardest time trying to draw like legs. They were always elusive to me. So difficult. And then, did I take any more pictures? Yeah, trying to figure out proportions too was very difficult. Die sehen schon echt professional aus. I don't know about that, Kiko, but thank you. Here's another one from, oh shoot, I made that way too big. We don't need it that big. All right, we need about that big. Here's when I was trying to learn how to like draw heads, but you can see that like, again, I was trying to figure out how to like the arms attach, you know? Here, this is interesting. This is what you were talking about yesterday, Gecko, is not knowing like proportions, like how to like get the body to fit, you know? And so what's wrong with this one here? We've got our head, right? Pretty standard way of drawing anime heads, right? You do the circle, then you add the point, you know? But the issue here is if we use the head to measure, oh boy, this is really off. So I think it might be a little bit smaller on some women, but I was talking about how yesterday where typically the shoulders are 2 heads like tall in width. So if we were to rotate this head, granted not perfect, and set it here in the center, our edge is there, and then the edge is here. I think we need to bring that a little bit closer. There we go. This is actually what our shoulder width should have been. Let me see if I can lower the opacity. Maybe by fixing some of these old sketches, it might help you guys kind of see how we can build this. But this is just a little proportion trick. So this is our head here, right? Again, you can probably see, guys, that the neck is a little bit too short. But it looks like I wanted the shoulders just to be very like straight on, no angles. So we can just say, okay, our shoulders are straight, but I'm gonna put them lower. And then we're gonna be like, okay, we're gonna pretend the neck's like a tree stump, right? And we'll draw straight down from the collarbone. There's like the center of our rib cage. And then we're not gonna go all the way to the edge. Because we have to remember, this is gonna be like our jointed section, which we'll have later in, where's that layer, guys? The sketches I was drawing here. See these other ones we were doing where I left in like the shoulder joint? So just know when you're drawing your torso, you're not drawing in the width of the shoulders. That's another thing to point out, guys. Like I'm not measuring all the way out to this section, right? That'll make her much, much wider. Because the shoulders kind of like come out and are separate from the torso. So we have to make sure that we leave in enough room for that. But that's kind of like, all right, that kind of shows you guys, you know, more how we use this cube shape on this front arm. Then that would have been the arms later. So proportion wise, that looks much, much better, much more realistic. But guys, that is some of my old drawings. This one, see, this one's not too bad. This is pretty darn close. If we measure her head, we put an angle. Now, women's shoulders are usually not quite as wide, so I think it works here. Also, this arm's kind of like forward, so that also is gonna change our width a little bit. All right, guys. Are you guys tired of looking at my old drawings? What do you guys think we should do? Should we look at some proportion tips, or do you guys want to try drawing another torso and hip from a reference photo? What do you guys think? Well, it's our sideways head. We don't need that layer anymore. And we don't need that layer. And we don't need that one. Alright, we got this layer. Chat, where did this layer go? Oh, here it is. Okay, I really should be naming these. Proportions would be great. Alright, chat. Now, I pulled some of these from Pinterest yesterday. Let's pull some more. Alright, let's see here. What do we got? Where's my folder for proportions? Now again, there's kind of like, oh shoot, you know how I was saying it was like 6 heads? I think 6 heads is more realistic. Apparently they even do 8 heads tall for some proportions, which is crazy. Yeah, here's this one. This just shows the heads. It might be interesting to watch me try and draw different characters with these different head proportions. So you can find a lot of different guides on the internet, a lot of different proportions, because again, you don't have to use what you're given. You can kind of like mess with the proportions. Let me find another one that's like more regular head height. This one's kind of low res. You guys aren't gonna be able to see. Oh, this might be interesting for you guys. Yeah, again, this is 8 heads. So actually anime, I was wrong, guys. Anime characters are usually 8 heads tall, not 6. That is really, really tall. I'm definitely not that tall. But again, you can kind of see how they worked out the proportions here. We're similar, like it's really to be a cube. And then they pretty much did what we did with the hips, right? Except they put in like these center lines here. So they did theirs more in like a V shape. But I think a cube's a good start. This is definitely more like rendered out. So a base or me, I've drawn people that are like 6 heads tall, and then usually about halfway is where I put around the waist. But again, it really just depends. It might be fun to measure some real proportions from real people, like the pictures we were just doing. But if you guys want to take a picture of these, also they have, looks like, this is great. It gives credit to where to find more for this, I guess. This is like their website if you guys want to check them out. I haven't been there, so I don't know what it's like, but if you're brave, you can look into that. But this is kind of a good base, especially if you're wanting to draw anime style characters. Like, get used to drawing. I drew a lot of standard anime style characters before I started playing around with proportions. So I think this is a good place to start. Like, just draw stereotypical basic anime characters if you want, or Disney style characters, whatever, using whatever the basic size proportion is, and just go to town drawing those, get used to it, and then when you're comfortable, be like, well, what if they were only 6 heads tall? What if they were only 4, right? Like, what would this character look like, you know? Like, where would the proportions be? You know? Like, maybe only 4 heads tall, this kind of looks like a kid, right? And then maybe they're not a kid, maybe they're just, you know, a short queen like me, and they're only like they're only like 5.5 heads tall. So, you know, you can kind of play with that and try and measure out about where that would be. And then again, play with the, like, maybe their legs are longer, maybe their torso's longer. Like, there's ways you can play around with it, and none of them's wrong. It's just up to like creative choice. So there is that. Now, chat, when you're working, also before I move on, does everyone has these saved if they wanted it as a kind of guide? Let me make sure everybody can see everything quick before we put this away. Let me know, Am I ready to move on? Do you guys need some more time to study these models? Because these are really helpful. Yeah, I don't know if you guys are familiar with like chibi art style. They're usually like 2 heads tall. And I actually used that same measurement system for drawing the characters in the children's book. So the little canary bird is 3 heads tall, and the little mole character is only 2 heads tall. So I use the head measurements all the time. I've screenshotted them. Let's move on. Okay, sounds good. All right, so maybe what we're gonna do, chat, is no, we don't need these anymore, and we don't need that layer. We don't need that layer. And actually, I'll keep that. We don't need these terrible drawings I did. I'm gonna get a really like stock type footage picture of somebody standing, so we can measure the heads. All right, this looks like it was from like a clothing photo shoot, but this will be good. All right, let's measure the heads, because this is pretty straight on, not too much of a perspective change here. All right, so we're just gonna draw line for the top and the bottom, right? And then using that same measurement, I'm just gonna measure with my finger. So it won't be 100% accurate, but this will give us a relative reading. If I wanted, I could just copy these layers. All right, so already 1, 2, 3, 4 heads down is about where the hips are. And it looks like the bottom of the 3rd head is about kind of where the waistline is. It's like around in this area. Let's just measure this down some more. This is a little above the knee. So if I'm trying to draw this dude, right, from a reference, but I want to make sure the proportions are correct, I can use these measurements. So he's not going to be perfectly... This is kind of giving like a quarter of a head is the bottom of the feet. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and a quarter. All right, 7 and a quarter heads tall. That is our proportions for him. So we're like, what do we do with this information? So again, we can use our cubes. We're gonna say, all right, I really want to draw this dude. We're gonna see what we can do, right? So whether I draw the head this big as a cube or I draw the head this big, it doesn't really matter, right? What matters is, will I have enough room on the bottom of the page to fit them all in if I stack 7 of these heads down? So you do have to kind of keep that in mind, guys. So I'm gonna start with kind of like a middle-sized cube. Just kind of like roughly guessing that's out the size. So that's our head. We got a little cube here, right? I'm gonna see a little bit at the bottom. We're not gonna worry about drawing the neck at this point. So again, we're gonna say, all right, what is our shoulder angle? Let me lower the opacity on this actually, because I want you guys to be able to see my new lines that I add in. All right, let's erase this out. Also, is everyone kind of following like how you can measure out with heads to get the proportions of the body? How's everybody feeling? All right, this is gonna be our... This is our person layer. Let me get organized here, guys. Some angles. I don't know how to spell it. There we go. I think that's right. And this is... So we're going to try, if everyone's ready, we're going to try and find our shoulder angles and our hip angle as well. So let's draw a little line here at the top of the shoulder and one here. So it looks like this one's lower than this one. All right, you ready? Let's go then. So we know that it's gonna be angled downward, right? This one, it's kind of tough. If you're eyeballing it, you might think it's kind of straight, but it's very subtle. And that's because he's kind of like turned away from the camera. So that is kind of creating a little bit of a perspective shift, but we're not gonna worry about it too much. So we can just draw the little tips there and then connect. We connect the dots. And then for the hips, I'm gonna say, oh, I think the hip joint's about here based on the clothing. Maybe I'm gonna say it's a little bit higher because I'm gonna be counting the top of like the hip line, not like the bottom part. Kind of like up here where we're doing the tips of the shoulder. And then I'm thinking probably the hip joint there. We can connect the dots again. And so there we have our angles. So again, we're gonna use our measurements and try and loosely capture that angle. And again, see how I'm just like loosely scribbling it in until I get it right? You can do that with your graphite pencils too while you're working it out. That way it's not a problem if it's not right. You can just erase it out. Actually, Chad, I don't think I gotta make this steeper, I think. Alright, that's a little bit better. Doesn't have to be 100% accurate, just generally there. Alright, guys, let's put in our center line. So lucky for us, his coat has literally a center line on it, like in the design. So this is perfect. So we can just draw out from there. And so, again, measuring from that line, I'm going to try and line it up pretty close to how the head is here. I'm going to draw it down. All right, so we're like, oh, okay. So we got our line, right? Going off into infinity and beyond. But we're like, where's the bottom of the rib cage? And this is where we can have our little bit of a guide with the head system. So we know that the bottom of the third head is about where the waistline is going to be, which is about where the rib line ends, right? So we're going to measure out 3 heads of the head we drew, right? Oh no, I put that on the wrong layer. Chat, I keep messing up the layers. All right, so we measure out our head in green, right? So if I count out, so that's 1 head, 2 heads, 3 heads. That's looking to be about there. So now we know where the bottom line of our rib cage cube is gonna go. All right, again, we're gonna try and follow the angles. It's not gonna be as steep. It's gonna straighten out a little bit. There we go. Now, again, for the width of the shoulders, we can use the head again to figure out how wide the shoulders are gonna be for this dude. All right, so let me make sure I'm the right layer here. Let's grab the proportion from his head. So I'm going to measure his head with my finger. I'm using my pencil and I'm just adjusting my finger up and down to like this top point to the bottom line. So this is the top of the head and then this is his chin. And then I'm moving it to the other side of my drawing and I'm marking it. And you can just place your finger to kind of like mark the spot. So that's what I'm doing when I'm measuring, guys. But you can do similar by like looking. So here, I'm using the pen, you can see my thumb, to measure how tall my head is. So the bottom of my thumb, pencil out the top. It's about there. So then I can turn it sideways and be like, all right, what's the width, right? Starting from here to there. So you can do a similar thing. All right, so we're gonna grab measurement of the head, and using the center line, where where like the collarbone meets in the point, that's gonna be where we put the edge of the head, right? Which might be easier to visualize if I show you guys like this. I'm just gonna trace his head here. I didn't do a very good job. So we take the head, we take it off, we rotate it, and we're like, yes. It's looking like it's one head wide to the left, but look at the difference here on the right side. This is because he's kind of turned at an angle, and so we're seeing more of one shoulder than the other. This shoulder here is closer to us. So we know that when we draw this right side, which would be his left side, of this cube, we're gonna have to add what looks to be about half a head width. So let's leave this head over here. Actually, we can leave this. We'll leave that head. Let's go back to our cube over here. We're gonna measure our pink cube head, and we know that the left side is going to be one head width, right? One head width. And then you're gonna measure out, okay, what's half a head width? You can kind of guesstimate. It doesn't have to be perfect at this point. And then you're gonna go line it up with the center of the rib cage and put your little mark in. Let me make sure I got this right. It's about like there. So those are going to be the sides of our rib cage. And then you can just draw them straight down following the angle right there. This dude looks like he's built like a football player. I think I may have measured. Sounds about right. Now, one thing to keep in mind too, guys, this is probably a little bit further than it needed to be, because look at this. If we imagined where his shoulder probably starts, like if there was a joint here, like if he was a toy, it would really stop here. So I'm just gonna move in just a hair on my cube, probably like this. Just a little bit more in on that side. And then on this one, what did we measure? Was it half a head again? Yeah, pretty much half a head. I think I made it too wide. That's why it's good. Double check your measurements, guys. Or triple check them. But that's part of the problem solving. I know this feels like a lot, but eventually you're gonna do this automatically in your head. You won't have to draw all these guides, but as a beginner, you need to build a really strong mental vision of all these different boxes and shapes, so that when you start trying to draw on your own or drawing from reference, when I'm looking at a reference, I'm seeing these boxes in my mind and I don't have to draw them, right? Because I already see them. But if you're not used to thinking like that, you're not going to be able to. So that's why it's important to take your time as a beginner. Take your time, work really slow, draw boxes, draw over reference photos. You're kind of building that burn-in way of seeing things differently as an artist, where everything I'm looking at, I'm thinking how I can break it down into basic shapes. What are the angles that build up the shapes that I'm seeing? I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but that's kind of why I kind of like this cube building method, because it helps you kind of think in 3D, and then 2, it allows you to break down almost anything. All right, so for the sides, we're just gonna give our cube a little bit of depth, and we're not really seeing much of a side. It's gonna be pretty thin. Again, if you wanted, you can measure that out. You'd be like, well, what's the width of the side of his side here? It's well, It's like a quarter of his head. I'm not really gonna measure it out. I'm just gonna kind of guesstimate. I think that's probably good enough. I get lazy about measuring, and so I guesstimate a lot. And then I go back and I fix my mistakes. And then I guesstimate again. And then you just kind of like, you work with it until you find what you're looking for. It'll start to look right. So that's just kind of part of the process. All right, so we have our torso. Now we need to do the hips. So according to the reference, also chat, maybe I should slow down. How's everyone doing? Any questions yet before I move on? Because I feel like I just dumped a ton of information. I'm sorry, guys. Like, I need to slow down. But I think we're getting there, guys. It's always trying to like think back. I'm like, how did I start, you know? So that I can show you guys kind of the best way to break it down. It might be fun to do a gesture drawing stream. That's kind of it's kind of like a more fun way to draw poses, in my opinion, because there's less pressure on proportion. It's like important, but the overall like feeling of the pose is a little bit more important. Ich versuche alles zu malen, was du meinst, und ich lerne dabei viel dabei. Oh, I'm so glad. Okay, I'm glad this is making sense. If anyone else is having any trouble, please just say, hey, Emma, stop. But if things are still seem to be working for you, I will keep going. All right, guys, so we need to do the hips now. All right, so looking at our little head guide, what layer is that, chat? Let's move this blue head. We don't need that anymore. Okay, so I need to draw this line in a little bit thicker here. It looks like the hip bone is a bit above the bottom of the fourth head. So this line here is the bottom of the fourth head in height. So we're gonna go back to our drawing, right? And we're gonna grab our measurement color. And we're gonna say, okay, let's add another head. So we got 3 heads. This is 4 heads now. And we know that it's about halfway. It's about in this section that the top of the hip line starts. So we're gonna grab our blue, and we already marked out the angle for the hips. So we know what the angle is gonna be. So we're gonna use our measuring again. Well, the angle looks about like this. Oh, that's steeper than I thought it was. All right. Let's measure again. Make sure I got it right. Not close, not quite there. Not quite there yet. Measure one more time. Out there. All right, so I gotta keep in mind that the hips are not gonna be as wide as the upper torso here. All right, so we can now let's find the center line, and we can use, this will be easy, we can just use the seam on the pants as our center line guide. Where's the blue? Okay, this is the layer I was using. I may up the opacity on this just a little bit so you guys can see. All right, so we're gonna try and find where is our center line for the hips and which way they angle. The hips are almost the same as the rib cage. You know, it's the same thing. You're just looking for which way is it like angled horizontally, and then which way is it angled vertically, right? So just kind of using like the middle seam on the pants, we can just use that as our guide. So we can see kind of like, we're almost gonna be seeing a bit at the top of the hips here. So if it was a cylinder, it'd be a bit like this. So we'd be seeing just a bit of the top. But don't worry about drawing that, guys. We're only gonna worry about the center line. All right, so now we have our measurement. I'm gonna get rid of just the long line here. We don't need that just yet. And we are going to try and imagine, in case you guys didn't have this, we're gonna try and imagine this center line here is going to extend downward and then meet at our new angle. So using measurements again, we're gonna put this line in. And it's just kind of matching up, arcing right into the center line there. All right, guys, I want to go ahead and put in the rest of the heads, no pun intended. That way we don't have to keep measuring the heads anymore. So we know he's 7 1/4 heads tall. We've got 4 in. Let's add our 5th head. 5. 6. Guys, what I used to do actually was I would draw out, I don't know if this was in any of the pictures I had shown you, but when I would start drawing a character, what I would actually do first is I would draw in however many heads tall I was gonna draw the character, right? And then I would label it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I would end up drawing the character like over it, right? So that's another thing you can do. Like Gecko, if you want to just start drawing a character, like you can just use that screenshot you took of the image from Pinterest showing the head proportions. Just mark out the same thing and then try to draw your character from your reference, in that proportion guide. So that's one thing you can do. You can just draw all the head proportions first, and you can extend the lines as far as you need. Like they can be way wider than the character is. So that's one thing you can do. Yes, I will try that. All right, sounds good. All right, well, guys, how many heads we got here? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We need a quarter. We need a quarter of a head. Roughly a quarter. This is not gonna be perfect, but that's okay. We're guesstimating here. And my lines aren't that straight either. So again, it's a rough guide, right? Also, sorry about that noise, guys. My computer hates it when I keep hitting shift. It wants to turn on, thinks my keys are sticky. Okay. All right, I'm just gonna lower this line. Seems like it's showing up on camera pretty good. I'm amazed by how accurate one has to be when figure drawing. Yeah, and Gecko, don't feel like you have to have it perfect. This is just if you want, really, really accurate, really accurately capture, the character's proportions. But if you just want to like doodle for fun, like there's no set rules to proportions either, because not everybody is 7 1/4 heads tall, right? So you can kind of use this method to like help you stay a little bit more like proportionally accurate, but don't feel boxed into it, because there can definitely be like Disney characters, any other like animation style. You'll see like really like bizarre proportions that aren't like accurate to reality, but they're still like really fun characters. So don't feel like you have to keep drawing everybody 8 anime head characters. Like that's just a typical size for that style, right? So feel free to go around and measure different characters by their heads, and you can even try measuring other reference images of different people of different proportions. And there's just like a whole bunch of different ways you can mess with proportions. We all gotta go back to the basics if we take a break. Literally, this has been interesting for me too. But I hope that this will give you a good idea of how you can use what you already have to kind of guide you in creating your characters. And there will be kind of like, not all the time, but it's usually around like half of the character's height. In this case, this guy has really long legs. It's probably because he's a model. But around half is usually around like the waist / start of the hips. So you'll start to learn these kind of like standards in proportion that will help you as you're drawing people and drawing from reference to kind of get the proportions a little bit closer. But again, when we draw from reference, it doesn't have to be a one-to-one copy. Like, part of, you know, it coming out a little bit different is also part of just like artistic choice. So again, I always encourage you guys, like, these rules are helpful to understand kind of what's happening and like a basic to kind of like fall back on, but don't feel locked into the, like, you know, everybody has to be this proportion. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of what I hope that you guys can take from this and not feel like super tied into this is how it has to be. And then, you know, kind of have something to at least fall back on when you're a little bit uncertain about proportions. Because proportions are tricky. I took a 4-month break to focus on writing and started drawing comics again, and the rest is already there. Oh man, that's tough. Well, it's good you're getting back at it though. You know, it's always, I feel like that would be really hard for me to get back into it. That takes a lot of courage. All right, chat. I think we need to finish the hips, right? All right, so looking at our reference image, I'm feeling like if we're trying to imagine where like the joints are, it's probably a bit like that. So below the fourth head. So I'm just gonna draw our cube in here. Again, I don't know if I got this. I didn't. This angle is not right. This is why you gotta triple check, guys. There we go. And it's me a little bit. Again, like that right side we're seeing here is turned away from the camera. So just like the shoulder, it's gonna be a little bit not as wide in this half section here. Ich bin froh, dass ich es direkt am Anfang so präzise. Oh, sorry, my German's terrible. Wie möglich lerne. Also danke dafür. I'm glad I'm learning it as precisely as possible right from the start. Thank you so much. Oh, you're making a new project as a superhero comic? Yo, let's go. That sounds fun. Yo, I really need to read the Marvel comics. I really want to read those. I don't know where to get them though. I don't have the money to buy them. Probably the library would have them. All right, so we're just gonna draw in the side there. We're not seeing too much of the side. All right, Gecko, you can make the call on this one. Do you want me to try doing the legs? I can kind of give you a very quick breakdown. We're kind of coming to the end of stream, but I can give you a little, like, a fast rundown into how you can kind of do that, which I'm sure you already kind of see how we can use our base here to kind of move forward. But let me know also if you have any questions, and then I will try to answer them. But I feel like we got a lot of stuff covered today. I mean, that's a lot of information. Hopefully not too much for you guys. You can read a lot of good major Marvel comics online for free. Really? Oh shoot. Okay, I need to look for that then. I need to look for that. Yeah, I need to read more comics in my life. I don't even know what I'm doing with my life anymore. I used to read a lot of manga, but the reader I used to use is like junk. I don't know if they just stopped like updating or what, but it's like it crashes all the time and there's so many ads. Yeah. So maybe I need to look into finding some more ways to read comics. This song is catchy. By the way, so much fun. I'm really having a great time sketching, trying and learning. Thank you so much. Also, sorry for switching from German to English and back. I choose whatever I feel. Yo, no problem, Gecko. I feel bad that I haven't been able to respond in German. I feel like my brain is cooked. I kind of been putting in the back of my mind like a plan to do maybe like a German study stream. I feel like that would be kind of fun. I feel like I really need like to force myself to do more studying, and streaming might be a fun way to I don't know, to kind of like hold me accountable, you know what I mean? So maybe on that day I'll try speaking just like all in German again. I don't know if I can do it, but I think it'll be better than the last time I tried doing that, because that was like my first time and that was crazy. I was like, my brain was cooked at the end. Yeah, but I think it'd be fun to do again. I feel like it was a good challenge to get me kind of like in gear to like be able to like speak more fluidly. I'm just looking here. Do I have this measured out right? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You know what? I started drawing these lines a little too close together. Okay, that's better. And then this one's actually supposed to be here. Because I'm like, if I put the feet in now, he's gonna be way too short compared to the reference. Okay, that's a head. Then here's another head. Alright, maybe we do... Let's just do a quick breakdown. Oh my word. Computer, stop doing that. It hasn't been doing this. Interesting. Alright. Alright guys, we're gonna do speed run. I have nothing against bilinguals, it just gets a bit irritating when they keep flipping back and forth. Oh, got you. Yeah, I don't know. I'm like a language learner, so I'm just like so I'm so used to like listening to a lot of content where people like switch back and forth that I don't even notice it anymore. But that's a good point. I wouldn't have thought of that. Yeah, that's what I was thinking though, that maybe I should have like a specific stream for it. That way like people know what they're getting into, so they know that when they watch me on that day that they're gonna be hearing me speak in German. That way they'll know what they're signing up for. Just in case they don't speak German. Alright, Gecko, I'm gonna give you the world's fastest rundown of how we could do the legs. So here's what I'm gonna do. We're gonna pull out our blue color and we are going to find the angle of the leg, right? So you can use, again, measuring. What I'm doing is I'm holding my pencil up to the screen and I'm imagining, what if there was a line that started at the top of the hip joint and then went down to the ankle, right? Like that line. And then the same over here. So ankle. Whoops, that is not a line. That's, oh my word. I can't draw a straight line. Oh, there we go. Okay, so these are going to be our guides to the angle in which the leg is facing. Fortunately, he doesn't have his leg like back like this and the foot turned like that. Otherwise, we'd have some more issues. But just for the straight here, this is gonna be a good start. One time I saw a guy trying to hit on, oh my gosh, like, and his friends kept speaking his native language and he kept having to tell his friends speak English. Oh yeah, that's tough. Okay, so we're running out of time, so I gotta speed run this, but so Gecko, we're going to draw a line from the top of the hip in the reference to the ankle, right? And then we're going to I'll stick to English now. Well, Gecko, you're so nice about Gecko's amazing because Gecko will translate his sentences for people. So like you can see his chat up here where he translates everything he just said, which is really cool. Because Gecko's been trying to help me speak more German. All right, we're gonna copy this angle, right? So we're going to put our line up here, about in the middle, right? And here as well. And we're just gonna, again, following that line, we're gonna measure over. And we're gonna try and trace that line at the same angle all the way down. If you guys can draw a stick person, you can do this too. So again, copying this angle. Oh, not quite right. I need to draw it a little bit straighter. A little bit straighter. There we go. Alright, and we can see it's tough here because like his shoes give him a little height, but if he was barefoot, I think his ankle would end about here. So we can add a little ball joint. And then for the knees, right? We're like, all right, we can use the head proportions to find the knees. So it looks like the knees are going to be about halfway, maybe a little below halfway between head 6. So we can put our little circle in here for our knees. And so that is a really simple way. You can just use lines and circles to kind of like map out one, the direction and angle of the legs, and then where the joints are going to be. So we're using, again, our angles and then the heads to measure. And then I know like eventually you might want to do some studies to learn how to draw feet, right? But you can use cubes for those shapes too. And we can use cubes on the legs. But we will have to do that on another stream because we're coming to the end here and I have some projects I need to work on, so I won't be able to go extra time today. But we will have a stream again tomorrow, guys, so don't worry. But again, like you can just use boxes and you can kind of like map out. That doesn't look too good. You can map out the legs in a very similar way. We will do another stream that talks about arms and legs, which will be another thing. And at some point we'll have to do a stream. We'll have to do a stream on doing hands, which will be interesting because I'm bad at doing hands. So we'll be learning very much so together on that one. Because I cannot draw hands. I should be seeing more of the side of the foot here. But any final questions before we wrap up stream today? I'm just gonna like kind of doodle over this sketch while we close out. So you guys can kind of see how I would kind of approach this next. But I'm not gonna go step by step in it really. We should give him like a big like vampire type cape actually. Oh, that'd be kind of fun. Yeah, there we go. That'd make it more interesting. And then he needs like maybe like cargo pants. Because Batman needs like it's kind of giving Batman vibes of something in Batman, but like also vampire, Batman vampire. It's gotta be practical because you need like, you know, you need cargo pants with pockets. How long did it take for you to master this? Master? I wouldn't say I've mastered it yet. But the pictures I was showing you before, that was 2020. Those were sketches from 2020. And I think I started like 2018. So like 8 years. 8 years up to the level I'm at now. I started drawing seriously in 2015. It took me like four years to get proficient. Yo, that was fast. Yeah, so everyone will learn like at different paces. I'm like a hella slow learner. So it took me a hot minute to get where I'm at. I'm not even that I'm not even that great yet. But you know, that's the beauty of art though, is that you just keep learning and you end up just loving the learning process you don't think about it too much. After like 2 years, you're just kind of like, oh, this is part of art. Part of art is just, you know, continuing to learn. So yeah, don't feel like you need like a deadline, Gecko, to like, all right, you know, in this many years, I need to be proficient, you know. But everyone's gonna learn it different. I only started drawing digitally in 2018. Oh, nice. Yeah, because digital's a whole nother thing, you know. It's like every medium you pick up is gonna take time too. So that's a good point, Jim. Yeah. So learn at your own pace, guys. There's no need to rush. I feel like this dude needs a hat. Maybe like a ball cap. Like ball caps are kind of hard to draw. A superhero that just wears a ball cap. I feel like that's kind of like giving Ant-Man vibes. You know what I mean? I will try and practice as much as I can. I hope to be daily. Well, that's a lot, Gecko. So if you're doing daily, then you're doing great. I did markers and ink before. Nice. Yo, markers and ink, that's fun. I always wanted to get like bougie markers. Yeah, the professionals always say like consistency is key. So Gecko, even if you're only doing like 5-10 minutes of drawing every day, you're doing good. So it's kind of it's like the Duolingo method. You know where they say like you only have to do like Duolingo 5 minutes a day? It's similar with drawing. So, you know, 5 minutes every day is better than like an hour once a month. You know, like consistency is the most important thing. But also, if you feel like you're getting burned out, don't force yourself. Burnout calls for special burnout calls for special treatment. So just know that if you feel burned out, don't force yourself to draw. Maybe do something else that's fun. All right, guys, we've got a lot of kind of like messy sketches going on here, but I feel like we covered a lot of information. So if it felt a little overwhelming, it's probably because it is just like a ton of information. But hopefully this was helpful for you guys. I think we're going to do maybe another stream at some point talking about doing arms and legs. I really would like to do a gesture drawing stream because I think it would be fun to teach you guys how to see like different shapes in a way where you're not thinking too much about the anatomy and you're seeing more the overall shapes. I think that'll make more sense once I show you guys, but yeah, my idea for a superhero comic is working. I'm working on is about a female superhero who is fire powered and fights a villain who is ice powered. Oh, that's a nice contrast. Basics matter. You helping others is to be respected. Oh, thank you, Jim. That's very much appreciated that you said that. I'm not too experienced at teaching, so you guys are kind of helping me get used to teaching. But they say like when you teach, it helps kind of like cement like ideas and ways of doing things that you learned into your own head. So, you guys are kind of helping me out. But guys, I'm starting to get hungry. So I need to eat something before I tackle the rest of my afternoon's work. Everybody, I will be back again tomorrow. Same time. I don't know what we're going to be doing tomorrow. If anyone has any requests, put them out now and we might do them tomorrow. We all learn and grow together. That's so true. So we might do, what can we do tomorrow? We could work on the children's book. Or we could work on, I have like a comic I'm working. Well, it's like not really a real comic. It's just like an Instagram comic series with the silly ducks. We could work on that. I have the storyboards almost finished. So I don't know. We could do that. We'll see what happens tomorrow. We'll see what I have going and what I end up having the time and energy for. See you tomorrow and thanks for teaching. Yo, no problem, Gecko. It's been really fun, kind of like being able to help you guys out and answer any of your questions. I love drawing. I love drawing characters. It was like my biggest passion in the beginning when I started drawing. Like I started off with like painting landscapes, but once I got into like anime when I was like 16, it kind of like skyrocketed from there where I was just like, I want to draw characters. So it's kind of fun sharing this with you guys. And it's helping me kind of remember the basics. All right, chat. I've yammered on for too long. I'll see you all tomorrow, and I think that's everything I wanted to say. All right, everybody. Thank you again. See you tomorrow, same time. And until next time, everybody, keep on creating. Bye, everyone.